We are back with another webinar. So if you're joining me, thanks again. Appreciate you taking the time to check this out. It's another free webinar that I am doing here, doing them Wednesdays at 10 o'clock. So, all right. So I think we are up and going now. So cool. So again, once again, this is James Wilson with MTB Strength Training Systems and BikeJames.com. Appreciate you joining me for another free webinar. In this one, I'm going to be going over the 3 core movement skills that you need on your bike, and then showing you some drills that you can do off of the bike to help you improve these movement skills. And so before I start, I want to explain, like, why is this important to know, right? Like, why do you need to worry about how you move on the bike or off the bike? Like, you just need to know the 5 steps of cornering or the 10 steps to do a manual, right? Like, if you just know these steps, then you can execute these skills. Or, the pedal stroke, just understand, reading up and knowing, oh, this is what a good pedal stroke is. And so, why do you need to worry about how you move? And at the core of this is 2 main things that are kind of at the heart of MTB Strength Training Systems for quite a while now. And the first one is that, behind every movement skill on the bike is a movement skill that you need to be able to execute off of the bike. And probably the best example that I can give for this is the story behind how I came to realize that this was important. And that is, I was at a skills camp, and we were on the first day, and one of the first things that usually people go over at a skills camp is body position. And so I'm watching this guy. He's trying to get in a good body position, but he just can't, right? I mean, and good body position is basically being able to, get down into a low attack position and then get up high. But like, a lot of people look at that attack position, that low attack position, as well, can you maintain good body position in this position here? Because you don't want to be, with your low back rounded and your shoulders hunched, and there's a good position to be in down there to make sure that you're balanced and able to move well. And so this guy was just struggling with it, and the coach was doing their best, right? Like they're giving all the cues that they can and trying their best to try and help him get into position. And again, this was like, 10 plus years ago. And I had this epiphany. I'm looking at this guy and I realized, like, man, I'll bet this guy can't touch his toes, right? Like, I'll bet he can't get off that bike right there and just touch his toes. And if he can't touch his toes, then it means that he can't execute a good hip hinge. And basically a good hip hinge, a deep hip hinge, is what you're looking for when you're in that low attack position on the bike, where you've got your butt back and your chest is low and your spine is straight. That's a good deep attack position, but that's basically the bottom of a deadlift or, the bottom of a hip hinge movement. And so that was my epiphany, I guess, my insight. The first time that I had it was like, wow, this guy is trying to execute this movement skill on the bike, but he can't do it off of the bike. So the odds of him being able to do it on the bike are almost zero, right? Like, if you can't do it off of the bike, how are you going to be able to do it on the bike? And plus, on the bike, you've got so many other things going on. It's a unique contextual environment that you're trying to apply movement skills in. And so that brings me, that was my insight, right? Is that how you move off the bike is how you're going to affect how you move on the bike. And so over the years, I have looked at and identified kind of what are the core movement skills that you need on the bike, and then what are the corresponding movement skills that you need off of the bike to back those things up. So things like attack position, things like your pedal stroke, things like cornering, right? Like, all of these things can be broken down, can have a corresponding movement skill that you need to be able to execute off of the bike, or that basically backs up, right? Like, that's how well you can move off of the bike is going to affect how well you can apply that movement to the bike. Because remember, on the bike, what we're trying to do is a specific application of our basic movement, our basic functional human movement. It's a specific application to our sport, which is mountain biking. And so again, that brings me to my second point, which is that athleticism is contextual. meaning that just because you're athletic in one context or one sport doesn't mean that you're going to be athletic in another sport. And so you see this in mountain biking all the time, where you have someone who's a good road rider or like a good runner, and they come into mountain biking and they aren't, as good. Like you have people who aren't as, fit as them, who are better riders than them, because the fitness and the ability to apply your movement is contextual. And so mountain biking is a very unique context to have to apply high level movement skills. And so that's where these drills come in, because you need something to help bridge the gap. One, it helps act as an assessment. Like these movement drills that I'm going to show you also act as a great assessment, because being able to identify, do you have a movement problem or do you have a skill problem, is super important, right? Like, so you may think that you need help cornering and you need to improve your cornering. Well, is it a skill problem or is it a movement problem, right? Like, can you execute the basic movement behind cornering off of the bike, or can you do that and you just need to learn how to apply it better on the bike? These are two completely different problems, two completely different things. And so trying to approach like skills training and your skills improvement from this singular viewpoint of like, well, you just need to learn the skill, without taking the time to figure out, well, do I have the movement skill and in the first place to be able to make use of these skills? And so again, that's where these drills come in, because they help bridge the gap between like where we're working out and we're just working on just general movement, and then we're on the bike where we're trying to apply this movement in a very specific context, and like having some movement drills that help bridge that gap, so that we're able to bridge the gap between our just general training off of the bike and then our very specific training on the bike. Because anytime you're on the bike, you're riding your mountain bike, that's specific training. And so these movement drills help bridge that gap, so they help bridge that athleticism. Like, okay, you may be athletic in one context, right? Like you may be able to move well in the gym, but get yourself in the specific context of trying to create that movement on a bike, and are you able to do it as well? And so again, you find a lot of times that people aren't, and so that's where these drills come in. So what I'm going to do is going to share the 3 core movement skills and then the drills behind them. And so to do this, all you need is a broomstick or something similar, right? Like you just have like a good thick piece of PVC pipe, but you're just going to need a stick, and I'll explain why, right? So if I'm going to adjust the camera here, so I'm standing up a little taller. All right. So when you look at moving on the bike, like the specific context of moving on the bike, there's a couple of things that make it unique, okay? So let's get this here. Getting this camera right is sometimes the funnest part of it all. So excellent. All right. Sorry about that. So when we're talking about moving on the bike, there's a couple things that make moving on the bike a very unique context for us. Now, the first thing is that we're hanging on handlebars. Okay, so that makes it very different than most athletic movement, right? Most of the time, your hands are independent of each other, so they can move independent and freely of each other. On the bike, we have our hands fixed, right? So on the bike, they're in a fixed position related to the bike, right? But at the very least, our hands are fixed compared to each other. As soon as I grab a stick like this, it's like grabbing handlebars, where if I move one hand, the other hand's affected. Okay, I can't move them independently. So, like, for example, it's very difficult for me to do contralateral movement, right? Like both my arms are connected together. So not being able to swing my arms to offset my balance when I'm running or jumping, right? Like that's one of the unique things on the bike. So that's one of the reasons that comparing running or jumping to riding your bike is a little, suspect. It's not exactly right, because those movements allow you to have independent free motion of both arms. On a bike, you don't. You have your hands fixed together. So that right there makes it a little bit different, right? The other thing that's very different about riding on a bike is what's happening with our feet. we have what's called an open chain movement, where I am pushing into the pedals and the pedals are moving away from me. Most other movement and most other sports make use of what's known as a closed chain movement, where I am moving and the ground isn't, right? Like the old joke that, you know, Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups, he does earth rows, right? But unless you're Chuck Norris, right, the earth isn't moving for you. Like, you're moving against the earth. So if I jump, right, the earth stayed in the same place, but I move. And so again, when you look at pretty much all sports, you know, most other sports, and a lot of the movements that we do in the gym, they are this closed chain movement where you are moving against the earth or something that's fixed, right? And so you're the thing that's moving against something that stays in place. On our bike, you're the thing that's fixed. You stay in place and you are pushing into something that moves. And so that makes it different. And so the fact that you have your hands together through a bar and you are creating an open chain movement where you are pushing at something and it's moving, as opposed to the closed chain where you're pushing against something that's not moving and you're moving, right? So like doing a deadlift where I am moving, right, but the earth isn't, versus like if I'm on my bike and I push, like the pedal moves, but I stay in place. So again, these are two very different things. And so again, this is one of the reasons that trying to compare too many analogies or too much from analogies from other sports that don't have these things can run into problems, right? And so you need to learn how to move in the specific context of being on your bike. And so so that's what these drills are going to help you do, is bridge that gap between the movement skills off the bike and movement skills on the bike. And so again, you'll need a stick to help you do that. Now, the other thing, whenever you're doing an open chain movement, so think about like a leg press, right? A leg press versus a squat. Okay, so a squat, again, I have the bar on my back, I am moving, and the ground is staying still. So I am the thing that's moving. When I'm doing a leg press, okay, if I'm like on my back, and imagine you've got the sled there, okay, I'm staying still, and the leg press is moving. Okay, so there's not, again, if you think about it, there's not a lot of exercises, there's not a lot of movements that we do like that. Like the vast majority of the movements that we do are the other thing where we're moving, we're pushing against something that isn't moving, and we're the thing that's moving. And so when you look at these open chain movements, you see that you want to be able to apply pressure through both ends of your arch. Okay, being able to apply pressure into something is just like riding a unicycle versus a bicycle. Okay, one wheel is less balanced and less stable than two wheels because I have two pressure points. With two wheels, I got two pressure points going into the ground. With one wheel, I have one. And so it increases the stability and all these other things. And so same thing with your foot. The arch, the ball of the foot and the heel create two pressure points with the ground. You want to be able to apply pressure through those two pressure points. So again, if you think about a leg press, you want to be able to apply pressure through the whole foot, not just through one pressure point. You want two pressure points because it's more stable. And so you being able to create energy in a more stable way through two pressure points is going to help with a open chain movement. So again, if you look at any open chain movement, unless you're specifically working the calf and you're trying to isolate the calf and do like calf raises or something like that, you're looking at trying to push through the whole foot when you're trying to create strength and power with an open chain movement. And so, excuse me, again, the point is that we want to mimic that with our feet. So when we're doing these movement drills, I don't want to be on the balls of my feet. I want to be pushing through the whole foot, which is how I want to be doing it on the bike as well, which is pushing through the whole foot, not trying to have one pressure point, which again, if you're pushing through the ball of the foot and you don't have anything to push through on the heel, that's what's happening. You have one pressure point, it's like a unicycle foot instead of a bicycle foot. It's going to be less stable trying to apply energy into that open chain movement. So again, that's why we're going to focus on that with these drills. So with that said, that's the context that we're trying to learn how to move. We have our hands fixed together with a bar, and we're trying to learn how to create pressure through our whole foot, because that's the best way to create pressure into an open chain movement. So the 3 basic movement skills you need on the bike, and then there's others, right? Like I'm not going to go over pushing, for example. I think push-ups are a great way to work on the upper body movement skills that you need. What we're going to look at specifically are the 3 lower body movement skills that you need. The first one is your hip hinge, your ability to go from high to low to high on the bike. Okay, this is one of your core movement skills, your core essential movement skills for being able to create balanced movement on the bike is to do that. The next thing is a lunge, okay? Your ability to stand up and pedal. So where I am pushing down with one leg and picking up with the other, driving while picking up, with having my hands in this fixed position. So that is your standing pedaling. And then finally, you have your corkscrewing motion, your windmill, which is the basic movement skill behind cornering. Being able to corner on your bike is all about knowing how to lean your body in a balanced way to help create rotational energy to pilot the bike. So there's definitely inputs that you have to do, but your body creating rotational energy and applying that rotational energy into the bike is also an essential part of being able to corner well. And so for that, you're looking at your stick windmill, which is a movement drill that I have talked about a lot on my site. But this movement drill right here is the essential movement skill behind being able to corner on your bike and being able to lean your body in a way where you stay balanced over your feet, right? Like if I don't know how to lean properly and I go to lean and I lean inside, boom, I'm going to crash. But if I know how to lean properly and I'm able to lean my body and twist my body to create rotational energy while staying balanced on my bike, that's a completely different thing. And so, this is probably the cornering in this windmill corkscrew motion is probably one of the best examples of a movement problem versus a skill problem. And that the vast majority of people who are trying to improve their cornering skills lack the movement skill to be able to do it in the first place. And so this movement drill, the stick windmill, which I'll go over here in more detail here in a second, will really help improve your cornering, probably more than anything else you can do, including taking a skills clinic or anything like that. Because if you don't have this essential movement skill in the first place, even taking a clinic or something like that, trying to help improve your cornering, can actually make things worse, because you're going to try to figure out how to work around dysfunctional movement rather than figure out how to apply good quality movement to the problem of how to corner your bike. But again, everything you do on your bike comes down to one of these 3 things. Your ability to create a hinge on the bike where you're able to go from low to high, right? To be able to stand up and pedal. And so your ability to create strong movement like this, and then your ability to rotate, to be able to twist and lean in a balanced way to create that rotational energy into your bike. Anything that you can think about that you got to do on your bike is going to boil down to some combination of one of those 3 things. And so your ability to execute these movement skills is behind your ability to move well on your bike. And so again, these act as a good assessment. If you struggle with one of these drills, then you know that you're probably not moving well on the bike, and that improving your movement skills through good strength training, good through mobility, through using the drills to help bridge that gap, and through conscious application of that stuff to the bike, that you can improve in these areas and do it pretty quickly, right? So, finding that you suck at one of these things is actually great. It means there's a low-hanging fruit right there. One of the worst things you can do is like feel like you struggle with your riding and do these movement drills and you rock at all of them. You're perfect at all of them. And it's like, okay, well, I don't know, where do we go from there? I guess it's just like kind of learn how to apply things better. But finding that you struggle with something, even if it's one side compared to the other, is great. Okay, that's a low-hanging fruit. It's pretty easy for you to start working on and ironing out, and you're going to see immediate results on the bike from being able to do that. So as we go through this, and you go through this yourself, don't get discouraged if you find that you struggle with more than one or more of these drills, especially the way that I described them. And but yeah, look at them as a way for you to improve. So anyways, what we're going to do is we're going to get into the drills now. So the first skill is the hinge, your ability to go from low to high on your bike and back again. And so I want to be able to do this in a way that's balanced on my feet. So I start with just a regular hinge. I'm going to go to a more specific foot position here in a second, but I like to just do a few reps with my feet parallel, hip width apart. My hands, similar to a position where I'd have them on my handlebar. And again, I'm not really too worried about what I'm doing with my arms. They're going to do, I don't have to try and hold a perfect position for where my handlebars would be. It's more the matter of my body figuring out how to move and respond to these things with my hands fixed together with the bar, okay? So what I'm going to do is do a hinge, which means I'm going to push my butt back. I'm going to pretend that there's a button on the wall back behind me. And I need to push that button with my butt. So I'm going to push my butt back like this. You see, as I do that, it lets my chest come down to the ground. And so I'm in this position here. This is our low attack position. And then I think about squeezing my glutes and pushing my butt back over my feet to bring me up tall. So focusing on my hips, I'm pushing my butt back to come down. And then I'm focusing on my hips by pushing my butt over my feet to come up. Okay, my shoulders I don't think about. I don't come down and come up. And this is the problem that a lot of people have, is they're shoulder centric, they're head centric. So to get down into their attack position, they think about, I got to get my face low, I've got to get my head low. And so they'll come down like this. And this is not a good position. Your back's in a bad position, you're unbalanced, you're leaning too far forward. So this is not where you want to be. But by learning how to focus on the hips, by pushing the butt back and then pushing the butt forward and letting the shoulders respond to the hips, I learn how to move from my hips. And so again, it's not just getting low in your attack position. This is also the essential skill behind manualing, behind bunny hopping, behind jumping. Like your ability to drive your movement and move from the hips rather than from the head and shoulders is at the core of all of those things. And so you getting better with that is going to help. Now, here's the thing. I'm going to show you two things that's going to help you make this more specific for riding. You need to pay attention to your balance on your feet. Okay, what happens is a lot of times when people get into their attack position, they shift their weight back. Okay, and so I'll feel the balls of my feet get really light, and all my weight's on my heels. Now, that's not necessarily bad on our bike. Sometimes we need to shift our weight back, but we don't always need to shift our weight back. Sometimes I need to get low and stay balanced where I'm at. I don't need to take weight off the front. Because remember, my front wheel, that's what I'm steering with. So if I take off weight and pressure off the front wheel, I'm losing weight and pressure to steer with. The front brake is my strongest brake. And so if I'm taking weight off of it, I'm taking braking power off of it. And so you don't always want to take weight off the front end. You're not always going to endo over the front end. Sometimes you just need to get low for whatever reason. And so knowing how to stay balanced on your feet is important. And also knowing how to do that while keeping a little extra weight and pressure on the ball of your foot is important. Again, you're like, why would you want to do that, right? Because if we're getting into the attack position, if we're getting low, then we're trying to get back because we might go over the front end. It's like, no, not always, right? Sometimes I'm going to get low so that I can come out and use that energy of driving the hips forward and getting tall. I can use that energy for a lot of stuff on the bike, okay? So having a little bit of weight and pressure on the front end, I'm loading up the front end so that I can maybe shift my weight back and do a manual or a bunny hop or something like that. But your ability to get down low while maintaining weight on the front end is also important. So it's not just your hip hinge. It's how you are able to hinge while directing the balance on your feet. Because just hinging without paying attention to what's happening at your feet and where the balance on your feet is going is missing a lot of it, right? Because where the weight and balance on your feet is going to affect where the weight and balance in your body is, and that's going to affect where the weight and balance on your bike is. And so you have to be able to control that weight and pressure through your feet if you want to be able to really control the weight and pressure on your bike and help, drive it instead of just kind of leaning back all the time and hanging on. There's so much more to riding than just leaning back all the time and just trying to hang on. Like, drive the bike. Use weight shifts and use pressure through your feet to help drive your bike, and that's where this stuff comes in. So, to help with that, you want to focus on doing your hinge with your weight doing 3 things on your feet. First is staying balanced, right? So get your balance between the ball of your foot, and your heel relatively even, and then come down and push your butt back and let your chest come down while maintaining that. Like, don't let your weight shift forward or back. Obviously it'll shift a little bit, but you're being conscious. You're trying to keep it as even through the foot as you can. And then when you come back up, I'm trying to drive through the whole foot, really use pressure through the whole foot to help bring me up. So, watching that I'm not just shifting back. Now, the second one is going to be the one that most of us are familiar with, which is as I come back to actually let the weight shift to the heels a little bit. And so you'll feel the balls of the feet get light, right? And then I'm going to drive through the heels and come up to the whole foot again. I always want to start from the whole, balanced foot position. It's just as I come down, I let the weight shift to the heels. And then I drive back up, my butt over my feet to come back up to a balanced foot position. And then finally, the third one is coming down and letting a little bit of weight shift to the front. And so now my heels are not off the ground, right? I'm not off the ground, but I've got a little bit more pressure, a little bit more weight on the balls of the feet than the heels. And again, I drive back up, getting to that balanced foot position and driving through it to finish standing up. So coming down with the weight shifting forward, coming down with the weight staying balanced, and coming down with the weight shifting back. So I need to be able to do all 3 if I really want to have command of my hip hinge. Okay, and then once I have that down, you practice it with both legs, now you want to get a little bit more specific and you go into a pedal stance. And so, you can measure it out if you want. I mean, if you've been riding bikes long enough, you should be able to hit where you feel like you stand on your bike pretty quickly, right? So it's going to be about hip width apart. You're going to have your feet spread so that this foot steps forward. It's not overlapping this toe, so if I bring it in, it wouldn't kick that foot, right? It's in front of that foot, hip width apart, like this. So this is going to be pretty close to where most people are standing on their pedals. I want to try to keep my feet pointed straight as much as possible, right? They may point out a little bit, but letting your feet turn out a lot while you're on the bike is not good. Okay, you need to work on that. Again, this movement drill can help with that. So work on keeping your feet pointed as straight as possible. That's going to help keep your hips straight, help you use your hips and everything properly. And now we're going to do the same thing from here. Okay, so I'm in my pedal stance position. And now I want to use not only my feet, like the ball and the heel, but also my feet as far as like front to back. Okay, so here I'm balanced. I got even pressure front and back on both feet. I want to come down and keep that even pressure. Okay, don't want the weight to shift from one foot to the front foot or the back foot, and even on the feet. I don't want to shift it to the heel or the ball of the foot. I want to stay balanced. Okay, and then the second one is shifting back, and now I'm going to shift the weight back. Now, naturally, when I shift the weight back to the back foot, that's going to shift it to the heel of the back foot, the heel of the front foot, right? Get it real light. But I'm going to have a lot more weight on this back leg than the front leg, and then back up to the balanced position. So I'm shifting my weight back, and then back up to my balanced position. Okay, and then finally, I want to be able to do this shifting and coming a little bit of weight on the lead leg, and then driving through that lead leg to come up nice and tall. So come down, and weight goes to the, a little bit to the ball of the foot, and shifts to that front leg. And so again, this ability to move, to do your hinge in this pedal stance position with the hands fixed on a bar, and you're able to do it balanced between both feet, shifting back to the back leg, and shifting forward to the front leg. You need to be able to do all those, and then you need to be able to do it with the other foot forward, switch foot. So naturally, you're going to probably start with whatever foot you feel most comfortable with on your bike being forward, and you're going to need to work on this going both ways. So the other foot forward as well. And again, you'll find that when you iron these things out, you'll probably find that the other foot forward feels really weird, and it's hard, and it's difficult to maintain good pressure and do all these things that we're talking about. And that's one of the reasons that riding switch foot on your bike doesn't feel stable and comfortable. And so if you're able to iron these things out through these movement drills and fix how you move and feel more confident with how you move with this drill, and then you're applying this to the trail by riding switch foot more and challenging yourself to use these new movement skills, you'll find that your ability to ride either foot forward will greatly increase. Like personally, I feel like you should be able to ride like 80 to 90% as well with either foot forward. So, it should only be in like the most extreme conditions that you feel like you really got to revert to that favorite foot forward to, have your confidence level where you need it. But anything lower than like that, 90% technical skill level should be either foot forward, and you can't tell the difference. And so this is a great drill, doing this with either foot, with the other foot forward, and learning how to move just as well that way is going to help with that. So that's the hip hinge. So you see there's a lot more to the hip hinge than just going in the gym and doing a bunch of deadlifts and doing a bunch of kettlebell swings and then jumping on the bike and just trying to apply it there, right? Like you need to learn how to apply those hip hinge movement skills to the specific context of riding your bike, which we just went through, so those that movement drill there will help you apply those movement skills better to the bike. So the next one we're going to look at is our standing pedaling. And again, I'm a real big fan of standing pedaling. I think most riders don't stand enough. There's so many good things that happen when you stand up to pedal. I'm not going to detail all of them there. This isn't a standing pedaling webinar, but just suffice it to say that, let's put it this way. If I was going to, bet you $1 million and we were going to race from here to the end of the block to see who is fastest on their bike, are you going to do it sitting down or are you going to stand up? Okay, so for the vast majority of riders, standing up is your most powerful position. Standing up is where you're able to execute your technical skills. There's pretty much no technical skill other than seated pedaling that you can do while sitting down. To corner, to manual, to do any sort of thing, any sort of technical skill on your bike, you have to separate your butt from the seat, and that's standing up. So learning how to be strong and comfortable with standing pedaling is going to unlock your most powerful pedaling position and also unlock your technical skills, because you're not going to be as afraid to get there and stay there, as opposed to like just trying to sit as much as possible and only stand up when you have to, right? So that's not the best way to do it. So the movement skill behind this is a lunge with a high knee. And so again, I've got the stick here. It's just using that to make sure I got my hands fixed. I'm not trying to mimic too much with that. So what I'm going to do is a lunge where I step back and then I step forward. I just want to start with a regular lunge. And as I step back, I want to keep as much weight as possible on this lead leg. What I don't want to do is step so far back that when I get back here, I have a lot of weight back here. I'm not trying to do that kind of lunge. I'm trying to do a very short step back type lunge to where I'm keeping most weight on this front foot. I'm only using the back leg kind of like a kickstand, right? And so again, balanced pressure through the foot, coming up nice and tall, making sure I'm staying nice and tall. I'm not coming down and leaning over. This isn't what I want to do, because when you do that, you're using your low back, right? As I come up, I'm going to end up using my low back to help push the hips through. And that's a big problem that riders have when they stand up to pedal, is that they're not keeping a good strong core and upper body, and they're using that to help them create this pedaling motion to get energy into the pedals. And it's putting a lot of stress on their lower back, and it's not as efficient as it could be. So you got to make sure that this is staying super strong while you're doing it, nice and tall, and then back up, right? So once you got that down, we're going to make it a little bit more specific. But as you come up, you want to raise this knee up. And so now we're working not just driving down with this leg, but also picking this leg up. And again, just like on our bike, we're not trying to pick it up to apply power, right? Like that's not what we're trying to do. But you still do need to pick this rear leg up enough so that it's not interfering with the downstroke and it's getting ready for its downstroke. So using this high knee at the finish teaches your body that specific movement skill of getting the hip flexion and the hip extension working together. And so you don't quite get that if you just do a regular lunge where you're coming up and stopping here. You're getting a little of it, but not like you want on your bike. So you can actually take this a little bit further and do like an air lunge where you take your foot off the ground like this, and you do a it is definitely a challenge on the balance. So you just don't put this rear foot down, so you do the exact same movement like that. So like I said, that's like just kind of every once in a while play with that. The core movement skill is that lunge with the high knee. And again, you want to make sure you're doing both legs. So stepping back, coming up, trying the other leg. Again, you'll find there will be a difference between the two sides. And so ironing those things out with these drills is definitely going to help you on the bike when you're trying to apply this stuff in the specific situation. So that is the lunge, which is the core movement skill behind it for standing pedaling. And again, the more you're standing up to pedal, just the better overall, but definitely it's your strongest, fastest pedaling position, and that's where you execute your movement skills, your technical skills from. And so the stronger you are with that, just the better you are going to be in a lot of other areas. So finally, we're going to take a look at the stick windmill, or cornering, which is like I said, the core movement skill behind cornering. So again, there's a lot of, I don't know how to put it, like different myths, I guess, around cornering. And a lot of it stems from people not knowing how to execute this core movement skill properly. And so if you get someone who doesn't know how to execute the core movement skill behind the technical skill, and you don't know how to really fix the movement skill, you end up creating ways to execute the technical skill that are really more about working around the dysfunctions of not being able to move well, as opposed to really what is the best, most efficient application of human movement to the problem of cornering your bike. What is that? And that is definitely you rotating and leaning your body to create rotational energy into the bike. If you think about any other sport, any other activity where you have to corner something that you are on, so something like skiing, surfing, skateboarding, snowboarding, all of these things, you are going to have to use some sort of leaning and rotational energy to help turn what you're on. And so again, a bike is a little different with that, but the principles are the same because we're riding something that's carrying us through space, but it doesn't have a motor, right? It's not riding a motorcycle, so it's more like surfing or skateboarding. And again, when you look at those, that's what you need, that rotational energy. So you definitely do need to be able to lean your body, but you need to be able to lean your body in the right way so that you're not off balancing yourself. And so again, I touched on this earlier, that if I'm going to create this movement, I can even do it with my legs just parallel here, right? If I go to create this movement, I can do this in a balanced way. I'm definitely leaning and rotating my body. I am creating rotational energy into and out of the ground by doing this. Now, if I can't do this movement properly, what I'm going to end up doing is leaning forward like this, like I lean in. Okay, I'm not able to keep my shoulders over my feet. My shoulders tip inside of my feet. And this creates an unbalanced position, which makes me want to fall. The same exact thing happens on the bike, where if I'm here, I can create this leaning and rotational movement while staying balanced on my feet. Doesn't matter which foot. I'm an advocate of lead leg being inside on corners, so you can use that outside foot to create pressure effectively, to get good bite with the rear tire and use it. But either way, I can move and stay balanced on my feet. If I don't have the hip mobility to do that, if I don't have the specific mobility to do that, then I'm going to end up, I lean inside, right? It's even worse this way because I have nothing this way to stop me, so it takes even less forward lean for me to lose my balance that way. But if I lose my balance on the trail, if I'm turning this way, right, and I go to lean my body and my hips don't move properly, and I lean forward and I get inside, boom. And that's the nightmare scenario that has led to the advice to not lean your body, to to pilot your bike. You want to be able to create rotational energy, and so that is what you're looking for. So what have we got? Yes, Krista. What's up, Krista? Glad you could join us. So the point is that you want to be able to create that rotational energy. You want to be able to learn how to lean your body in a balanced way, and that's what you're going to apply to your bike. And the best way to do that is through the stick windmill. Now with the stick windmill, we want to put it on our back like this. Now we're not keeping our hands together, but our hands are still joined by the stick. And by putting it back here, it actually like locks the shoulders in as well. It makes the shoulders, they can't move as independently. And so I have to learn how to move the whole torso, rotate through the T-spine, as opposed to just twist my shoulders. It's a very different thing. It can look kind of similar. You know, if you're on your bike and I'm trying to do this and I'm just twisting my shoulders, it's totally different than me like dipping the shoulders and creating that rotational energy there, right? So putting the stick on our back like that helps lock the shoulders in, has our hands locked in place. So it's actually good for what we're looking for. So we're going to get set in our pedal stance, and again, we just went over this one. In the hip hinge, but if you need to measure, you can. But in general, we're going to be looking at hip width apart. I don't want too wide hip width, and then I step 1 foot forward so that it is, not going to kick it. Like if I bring it over, I'm not kicking that toe, right? Like I have crossover there. So that's generally going to be what we're looking for. So with this movement here, this movement drill, I'm trying to keep everything pointed forward. The only thing I'm going to let turn is going to be my chest, and it's going to turn away from my lead leg. So right here I've got my left leg forward, and so this left leg, I'm going to turn my chest to the right, so it's going to turn away from that. Now when I do this, I want to keep my toes, I want to keep my hips, and I want to keep my eyes pointed forward. I want to separate my shoulders rotating from everything else rotating. I don't want anything else to move with it, right? I don't want this to happen. This is not it. So to do that, I'm going to have to push this hip forward. I'm going to have to counter rotate this hip against the shoulders turning. So if I'm going to turn my shoulders to the right, okay, away from my left leg, I have to counter rotate my hip to the left to counter that. I have to actively do that. So if I don't do that, my hips are going to turn. It's going to happen. I have to counter rotate. So this counter rotation, and now I'm counter rotating my hips one way. I'm turning my chest. Basically, your nipples are like a good proxy for thinking about that. Like if you can get your nipples to point to the side. That's what we're looking for, okay? And so I want to turn my chest. The stick and the shoulders come with it. I keep my eyes forward. I keep my hips counter-rotated. And when I get to the point where I feel like if I turn any more, I'm going to lose my hips. My hips are going to open up. I don't want that. Okay, I want to keep my hips counter-rotating. I turn my shoulders to the right as far as I can. And then when I can't turn them anymore, I push my butt back. I'm doing a hip hinge here. So I'm going to push my butt back like I'm going to try to touch that button on the wall behind me. And if I can, I want to end with my elbow inside my knee here. And then I'm going to come back up out of that. Okay, so then I rotate out. So I turn, I hinge, I come out, I unhinge, and then I unturn. So rotate, hinge, hinge up, and rotate out. Now, the other thing that you want to make sure that you're doing with this, besides counter-rotating this hip, is you want to be loading this back foot up. So when I start to turn, when I get to this point here, I'm heavy on this back foot. I felt my weight shift back a little bit to this back foot. As I push my hips back, I want to load this rear foot. I want it to get heavy. And then I'm going to drive through this rear foot to bring me up and out. So this is not on this lead foot, right? There can be a tendency that as you come down to start leaning forward and load this lead leg. One of the ways you'll know that you did it right is that your elbow will sit inside the knee. If I lean forward, not only will this front foot get heavy, which should be the first cue, but my elbow is going to be in front of the knee. I'm going to have to kind of twist and struggle to get it there. But really what you need to be focused on is what's happening with your feet. Where's the weight and pressure on your feet? Okay, so again, I'm loading this rear leg, and I load it as I come down, and then I unload it, I drive through it, and then I rotate out. So rotate, hinge, unhinge, unrotate. And again, as you get it down a little smoother with it, you know, you can shave off the edges where you're coming up and then out. But at first, I want you guys to, like, you know, take that pause, like turn, pause, hinge, pause, unhinge, pause, unrotate. And again, you really got to fight to keep those hips forward while you're doing it. Don't let them open up. Okay, so on the bike, this is an important movement skill because as I lean, right, the way for me to lean my body is for me to dip this shoulder in. And as I do that, that's going to push this rear hip out. So it keeps my shoulders over my feet. That's the key thing. If my shoulders come outside of my feet, I'm unbalanced. If my shoulders stay inside my feet, I'm balanced. So I push my hips out to counter that. This rear foot is heavy here. And so again, this is the reason that your rear foot drops. One of the reasons I hate the advice to drop your rear foot in a corner, because you don't want to drop that outside foot. What you want to be doing is you want to be using this rotational energy to create pressure into that pedal. Now, the more rotational energy that I create, right, like the steeper and harder of a corner it is, the more pressure I'm going to put into the pedal, and the more that pedal is going to drop. But if I'm in a pretty relatively easy corner, and it doesn't take an extreme amount of foot pressure to apply the rotational energy I need to get through it, then just dropping my foot can actually knock me off balance, right? It can take my hips out of balance. I lose my ability to apply any more pressure if I needed to. And so, you know, the reason that you see good riders, pro riders, drop that outside foot is because they're creating pressure through that outside foot to create pressure through the rear tire to maintain traction with it. And the more pressure they create, the more that foot's going to drop. But just dropping the foot is not what they're doing, right? It's not the same thing. So pointing to a pro rider and saying, hey, look at this, you know, when he's in this extreme corner, look at his foot, it's all the way down. That means that dropping the outside foot is what you want to do. So that's what you want to do all the time in every situation. It's not the same thing. It's taking that out of context. And so understanding the context of why that foot's in that position will help you understand better what you need to be focusing on, which is good pressure through that outside foot as you're leaning and you're creating this rotational energy, and then using this back foot to drive through. Again, if you're coming into that corner and you load that back foot and you get through the apex and you start to drive through that back foot, that's where you get the little like little berm busting stuff that happens. And so if you're just dropping that outside foot going in, you don't get any chance to do that. So it's not learning how to do this in a balanced way will help you with that. So again, you want to learn how to, again, you still got to lean the bike, and all those things are important, right? You need inputs into the bike. But if you'll notice, right, if I'm coming here and I do this, I dip this inside shoulder, and again, without my shoulder staying connected, right? When this inside shoulder drops down, the outside shoulder comes up. See this angle right here? This angle is creating the rotational energy. Just doing this is not the same thing, right? So I can do this, but I'm not creating that angle. I'm not creating rotation through my body into the bike. And so I do that, but watch what happens, right? I drop this, I do this. Now, I just started to push on the inside hand, right? Counter steering is important. I'm loading this outside foot. Again, we were talking about it. I want to create pressure through the outside foot. I don't need to drop it all the way down, but I need pressure through the outside foot. So by me doing this movement, by dropping this inside shoulder and doing it in a way that maintains integrity between them and the hips are able to hinge and respond to keep me balanced on my feet, it puts me in this position where I've got counter steering going on and I'm loading the outside foot. And I didn't have to think about that. Okay, so just me thinking about getting in a good position starts to set me up to start using these manual inputs of counter steering and pressure through the outside foot to help steer the bike through the corner. But if I go in and I'm just like, okay, counter steer out foot, it's not the same thing. Okay, this is what you see a lot of, is people staying like really dead with their body and trying to manually input their way through a corner instead of using their body to create the rotational energy, and also helps put them in the position to better use those manual inputs more effectively. And so your stick windmill is that key movement skill behind it. Can you rotate while keeping integrity between the shoulders? And can you start to come low? Again, to do a corner, I've got to get low. Okay, so can I turn and can I get low while staying balanced on my feet? Okay, that's the movement skill that's behind it. And so again, you work, I'll guarantee you, it's like a party trick I have with people. I ask them, what's your favorite foot to ride with forward, left or right? And whatever foot they say, you can bet them with pretty good assurance that you're going to win, that's the direction they like to corner. Okay, if I have my right foot forward, I'm a little more comfortable cornering to the right. Yeah, if I prefer to have my left foot forward, I prefer to go that way. And why? Well, because we always ride with the same foot forward. You have your foot that you like, and so you get set up, and your foot position is going to affect how your body is going to be able to move. And so you're able to move more efficiently with that inside foot forward. And so your ability to go into a corner with either foot forward, as opposed to being locked into just one foot forward, no matter what corner you're going into, because that's your favorite foot, it's going to help you immensely with your ability to corner, in either direction. Now, again, this isn't, you can see, like, I can do this movement with my feet either way, right? People always make this argument, oh, look at the pros, they're not switching their feet between every corner and all this other stuff. Look, I'm not going to argue about what they're doing, okay? I'm just talking about from a movement efficiency standpoint. When you're looking at like how you move off the bike and trying to apply that to how you move on the bike, having your inside foot forward and using this motion to load this outside foot to create rotational energy into the bike is going to be the best, most efficient way to do it. You can do it without that. You're not going to get the best like rotational energy through the feet though. But again, I got to be honest with you, clipless pedal riders, they can't really create rotational energy into the bike because if they rotate with their feet, they become unclipped. And so they learn how to ride in a way that doesn't use rotational energy. But that's not the best way to ride your bikes. They have to learn to ride that way because they're riding on pedals that make them unclip if they actually use rotational energy, as opposed to using the rotational energy that your body creates by having pressure through the whole foot and allowing that rotational energy to be delivered into the bike and into the pedal. So, but anyways, that's one of the reasons that a lot of high-level riders don't really care which foot they have forward because they're not using that foot pressure to create that rotational energy because they're using clipless pedals a lot. But again, for you, the normal, average, everyday rider who's not a freak of some sort, doesn't get to ride every day, all these other things, if you do this, if you start testing it, either foot, like riding with the inside foot forward and working your stick windmill so that you feel better, you feel good and mobile either side, I'll guarantee you're going to notice a big difference, and you're going to start making a conscious effort to try to set yourself up properly to go through corners because it's a little more fun and it is just the more efficient way for your body to do it. Just again, that's my the efficiency thing is not my opinion, but the fun thing is my opinion. I'll say that. So that's it, man. That's the 3 movement skills and the 3 movement drills. Again, you've got your hinge, your ability to go from high to low on the bike, but not just high to low, but do it in 3 ways, right? I want to be able to do it where my weight is shifting forward, I'm staying balanced, and my weight is shifting back. I want to be able to use all 3. I want to be able to do it with both feet in my pedal position. I want to be able to do a good standing pedal stroke. So my lunge, where I'm stepping back, I'm stepping up to this high knee, and I'm maintaining good core position while I'm doing this, right? I don't want to be leaning forward and using this, doing both legs. Okay, again, ironing things out there. You'll find that that'll help. And then finally, your corkscrewing movement, your ability to, your stick windmill, where you're able to rotate and hinge to create rotational energy into and out of the rear leg, is that core skill behind cornering. So if you work these 3 movement drills off the bike, again, you don't have to get crazy with them. I'd recommend setting them up as a circuit, doing like 5 to 10 reps on each side with each, going through it 2 to 3 times, maybe doing it on your days off. Now a lot of people have a lot of time, so you can do it every day. I mean, really, if you want to get better, do it every day. I guarantee you that if you do the stick windmill every day for a month, your cornering is going to improve just immensely, and without you having to do anything else, just because now all of a sudden you can move properly on the bike. You can actually create the movement that you need to corner on the bike. So, do it every day. If you find one of these 3 things you struggle with, do it every day. Doing 2 to 3 sets, 5 to 10 reps each side. You're trying to use it as a learning tool. You're not trying to use this as a workout, right? I'm not trying to break a sweat. If you're starting to fatigue with it, you're doing too much. You want to stop short of fatigue. Like, fatigue is not what we're looking for here. That's what working out is for, right? This movement drill stuff's about creating quality movement, improving how you move. So, keep that in mind, when you're going through them. But, these 3 drills, if you do them on a consistent basis, will make a huge impact on your riding. And again, coupling this with good strength and mobility training, where you're working on the basic movement patterns, your hinge, your squat, your lunge, your push, your pull, all these things you need to be working on, in the gym and with your mobility. But then you have these movement drills to help bridge the gap between applying them to the very unusual specific context that is riding our mountain bikes. And again, it's a very unusual sport when you look at the specific context that we're asked to create movement in. And so having these drills to help bridge that gap can help. So anyways, I hope that you guys have learned a few things here and taken a few things away. Let's see here. Oh, I've had a few people join us, man. Really appreciate everybody getting in. Hey, man, nice. So we got a few here. So we got any questions here. If you guys have any questions and you're still watching, man, throw it in. I'll be happy to answer just about anything, as long as it's not political, I guess. I'm trying to keep that stuff to myself. But yeah, Krista, like the windmill with kettlebells. Yeah, me too. I love kettlebell windmills. I will say that one of the things with it is that your shoulders can move independent of each other. And I noticed that people who didn't really have great like movement skill with the corkscrewing motion were able to get by with kind of hypermobile shoulders in maneuvering the kettlebell around. And so I've actually got to where I work the stick windmill first. That's first and foremost. Like once people have that down, then you can go back to the kettlebell windmill and you'll find that it's going to be much different for you, because you're going to have a better feel for how to keep the shoulders connected and move through the T-spine, as opposed to just moving the shoulders and twisting the shoulders. And so, so yeah, stick windmill is a great one to add in there to make sure you're getting the most out of your kettlebell windmills there. And kettlebell windmills too, I will say, some people have them like this corkscrewing motion. It is like, you don't want to load it, right? Like I wouldn't take someone and just like throw a kettlebell on them and say, start doing the windmill. Dan John is the guy who came up with the stick windmill and first brought it to my attention. And I was like, that's brilliant, because this is an unloaded weight. It's like a body weight squat, right? I wouldn't take someone who doesn't know how to squat great and load them and start working out the squat pattern. But I would start having them squat, right? You need to do some body weight squats. You need to get down in the bottom of your squat and just hang out. And so, so having an unloaded, body weight version of the movement really helps create a safe learning environment for people to learn how to do the movement in the first place. And so a lot of people shy away from the kettlebell windmill because it is a little bit of a complex movement skill. And if you don't have that core movement skill, it can get dangerous, because if you rotate through the lower back, it can cause problems. If you are hypermobile in the shoulders and rotating too much through that, it can cause problems. So I think it's really kind of too bad that people don't work the windmill more into their programs. But it's just because I think the stick windmill should help bridge that gap. But anyway, so that's my opinion with the stick windmill. I like it. But the kettlebell windmill, I like it, but I like the stick windmill is a more accessible version for more people as well. So see, we got one here from Cortez. I tend to shift my weight towards the top of my handlebars. Back wheel sometimes. Yes, all right. So Cortez, you're talking when you stand up to pedal, you shift your weight forward on top of your handlebar, which is good. You do want to do that. The whole idea of like not putting weight on your hands is bull crap. You need weight on your hands. You need pressure on the front end. That's why it does feel right to pedal there with the highest torque. And it does unweight the rear wheel. So sometimes your wheel hits a small bump or root and the wheel comes up and your feet will come off the pedals. And two things there I will say again, it's like the more of a midfoot position you can have, the better. Because if you think about your pedals, that they're centered on a rotating platform, and if you have one pressure point, we talked about this earlier, like unicycle versus bicycle. Well, if you've got the more of the ball of the foot that you're on, the more of a unicycle, and that's just kind of an unstable way to create energy in general with the foot. And then you're going onto a rotating platform. And so if you don't line it up perfectly over the axle, which very few riders are, because it's super uncomfortable, the torque on the leverage on your ankles is really high. So people tend to shift a little bit more midfoot, but still kind of try to stay on the ball of the foot. Now you're going to create the platform is going to rotate. So now you've got unstable energy going into a rotational platform. And so it literally wants to kind of like throw your foot off the pedal. And so the more of a midfoot position you can get, the more you can kind of like stabilize the energy on both ends and work towards more of a bicycle pressure, like two pressure points, the less you're going to find that happening. And again, I'm just taking, I don't know what your foot position is there, but that's generally a lot of times what's happening is people are too much to the ball of the foot, which creates that rotation, which any little unweighting your foot's going to want to come off. And so if you have that balanced pressure going in, if it unweights, it's going to come like this, right? If you got one pressure point and you're like this and it unweights, like what's going to happen? Like it's already trying to like come off. You're barely, like the grip of everything is what's keeping it on. And so if you lose contact with that, it's going this way. Whereas if you've got this and you lose contact with it, you're going to stay more over the pedals and come back down. So it's a little bit more stable way to do it. And so also so, you know, and that can happen from time to time too. Learning to anticipate those things just becomes part of it. Yeah, mountain biking is a black swan event, as they say. It's very hard to control everything. So sometimes you're going to hit that route and things are going to spin out. But I suspect that you'll get better with it with practice. And then, yeah, so Krista was mentioning that she has trouble keeping her feet on the pedals when jumping. And again, a lot of that stems from the same thing that I was just talking about, that your ability to create pressure into your pedals is super important. And when you look at how do you create pressure with your foot into something when it's moving and you're not, like you find that the best way to do that is through that whole foot. Also, same thing with like a deadlift, right? Like if you're the best way to create pressure through your foot when your foot isn't coming off of what it's on. That's another thing that's different about riding your bike than running or jumping sports, is that your foot isn't coming off the ground, right? So if you look at sports where their foot isn't coming off the ground, like, you know, snowboarding and skateboarding and skiing and stuff like that, like they use the whole foot and they use pressure at both ends, because there's times when you need pressure through the whole foot. Like just being stuck with only one pressure point, it's not as stable. And so the more of the midfoot position you can go to, and then again, like that's why I designed the Catalyst pedal the way that I did, and why, you know, honestly, some of the biggest feedback we get from people is their feet just don't slip off of it, is because, you know, the grip on it's, you know, crazy, because your feet just don't go anywhere because of the stable energy going into the pedal, and also the stable energy going through your foot, right? Like it's more stable to create energy through two pressure points than it is to try to create it through one pressure point. Yeah, just, you know, pressure through the feet, your ability to create pressure through the feet is huge. So, all right, man. So yes, midfoot placement is super important. And again, this was it's not about the ball of the foot or the heel, it's about both, right? And again, this is why I designed the Catalyst pedal the way that I did, was this insight that when you need to be able to create pressure through the whole foot, and that, you know, even on like something like the Catalyst pedal, like I can shift my weight to the ball of my foot just like I can on the floor, right? Like the floor is not moving, going anywhere, but I can do a hip hinge and shift my weight to the ball of the foot, or I can do a hip hinge and shift my weight to my heels, or I can do a hip hinge and stay balanced on my feet. So this idea that like I can't, you know, I lose agility on the bike because I can't apply pressure through the ball of my foot is not entirely accurate, right? And so the midfoot position allows you, especially if you have something that allows you to stabilize both ends of the arch. So now you're able to create pressure through both ends of the arch. That's going to stabilize the energy that the foot's creating. It's going to stabilize the energy going into the pedal itself. And just from a functional movement standpoint, right? Like being able to create energy through your heels. Like all of these drills that we just did here, none of them I had you come up on the toes. Do them on the toes, right? Your knees will hurt. Your low back will hurt. It's not the way we're made to move. You got to be able to apply pressure through the heel in order to recruit the hips properly. But it's not just the heel, it's the whole foot, but the heel's part of that. So, but it'll help in a lot of different ways. Yeah, so, but yeah, you can check out, if you guys have any questions on that, anything else you think of, you can hit me up at james@bikejames.com, and always happy to answer questions and stuff. So, cool. Well, man, I'm glad you guys appreciated the video. Glad quite a few of you guys jumped in and joined me. And yeah, try these things out. Let me know what you think. Definitely love to hear what your kind of experience and results are from using these movement drills yeah, let me know. So appreciate everybody's time, and I will talk to everybody next week.